Welcome, Mark, to Metalating Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Alarum, this new album, Recontinue, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we started by asking, how are you doing today? How is the band through the last couple of years? Because your previous album came out during the difficult time, pandemic time.
Yeah, thanks for your time. It's great to chat, mate. All is well here. We are all very excited about releasing our new album, Recontinue. Over the past couple of months, it's been quite busy getting everything ready for the release, which is next Friday, November the 8th, and heading out to do some shows with Pestilence on the east coast of Australia as well next week. So yeah, it's all good since 4 and a bit years since Circle's End. It's great to be back with some new music and looking forward for everyone to hear it.
Okay. So how do you feel about this new release compared to your previous one, which came out, as I said, during the difficult times? Sure, Circle Ends was released in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, and now we have this new album outside of the pandemic.
Yes, look, it was challenging times for us releasing Circle's End and not being able to tour once we released it. Where we live in Melbourne, the lockdowns were very strict and very lengthy. So it was a couple of years after the release that we got to do a handful of shows. So yeah, I suppose the time was used to write and record new music, probably coming from a darker side than probably some of the previous albums, quite challenging times. So I think the aim was to turn around a new album in a shorter amount of time than what we had done previously, and to make the heavier parts heavier and the jazzier, clean parts cleaner, and make the album a journey from start to finish.
Mm, okay. Other detail about this new Recontinue is that you are releasing completely by yourself this new album because the previous one it was released by Dinner for Wolves, and now you are continuing releasing completely independent release. So why the band release this new album independently and not why the support by the label or perhaps with a big label? Who knows?
Yeah, so with Alarum, going back even to our first album, Fluid Motion, we've always been an independent band and have always paid for everything to release everything ourselves. We have had albums that have been licensed for some territories in Australia and also overseas in Europe and America, but they were licensing deals, which they helped, but they weren't the only contributors to making the albums happen. So with the last album, Circles End, Dinner for Wolves did help with some digital distribution, whereas all the physical CDs, records, and merchandise, we still all did all that ourselves. Sent it out all around the world from our own website. So we're essentially just continuing what we've always done in the past, but this time, controlling all the digital side as well.
Mm, okay. Other detail about now talking about the history of the band, especially, is that your first album mentioned the Fluid Motion. It was released in 1998. So
Correct.
6 years later, when the band was created in 1992. So, and for me, that's a curious thing. So, why the band delayed 6 years to release your first album? Because in Latin America, it's normal that a band here delayed 20 years or 15 years to release their first album. But in
Yeah.
Australia, Europe, or US, it's more easy to release an album though during those times.
Yeah, so with the early times of Alarum had a few different lineups in its early days. It was probably before 1992, around about early 1990s, where there was some various different lineups, and then it got to about 1995, and the band wasn't really doing anything. Members had gone their own way and stuff. So late 1995 is when myself, Scott Young, and Matt Rakovalis, we were jamming, which was not Alarum, and the decision was made to get re-Alarum happening again, including some previous members. So it was really from late 1995 until 1998 was the time period for that material that we wrote and recorded that first album in 3 years. So we actually recorded it in 97. So it was really only 1 to 2 years sort of working on for that first album.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and other detail is according, well, the old days. I remember that you and Alchemist, yeah, Alchemist are the first band like mixing this kind of stuff, progressive. Well, Alchemist is more experimental. At that one, I have here the first album from Alchemist. It's more
Yeah, cool.
experimental. I don't know. It's
Shower
very
Kingdom, yeah.
yeah, it's very different from another band. So for this topic, and then and now you can see now bands like Psychroptic, a lot Mars, they're playing a lot of technical or industrial or electronic, like Berserker, like the Diamenta. So usually Australia try to put a different elements into the death metal since Alchemist and new bands now. So for the question goes, why always Australia bring us this kind of experimentations into the death metal.
Yeah, I think with the Australian music scene and being so removed from the rest of the world, you know, yeah, we have influences from the whole world. And within the scene itself, I suppose bands are trying to find and form their own identity and sound, not just replicate what's been done by others. So it is something about where we are located, and yeah, and I suppose the history of music is that if you look back at the '80s, like a lot of the bands did all sound different. You had Exodus and you had Slayer and you had Death. Like it was quite easy to hear the differences in those bands back in the day. I think it's something that continues with the Australian music, and there's definitely a competitive edge to do something different for a lot of bands.
Mhm. Okay, and talking about now, one thing that captured my attention about for this Recontini is, and that many posts that you did in your Facebook page is that you mentioned that it's like a continuation for Eventuality, your second album, a great album by the way, because I have here that my copy.
I think
So for this topic, so is this new Recontini is like the second part of Eventuality, or perhaps like involved of the eventuality concept music?
yeah. So with all of our albums, they quite often have similar themes or songs that are related to other songs. With the latest album, Recontinue, we definitely wanted to touch on previous albums and recurring themes in artwork, in lyrics, in songs. So when it came down to an idea of a theme for the album, and we were looking at eventuality. There was two different covers. There was an Australian cover, and then there
Mhm.
was a European American cover. So with the Australian cover, it had a nature on the front, a fern. Here, I've got a copy here. I'll show. This was the cover that the band had for our own release. It
Okay.
was changed for America and for Europe, but this is what we wanted. So you have a look at the cover. It goes from nature of then
Okay.
and then humans overtaking nature, and then the thing that you're left with. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a homeless
Nice.
person grasping onto the last part of hope, or part of Earth. So that theme about continuing is. If you look at the artwork on the new album, it once again has the tree, it has the blacks, it has the greens. So it is related to eventuality in that way. And the last lyric on the album of Eventuality is the song Reconditioned. And the last vocal line is, and again to recontinue. So that last lyric line is the title for this new album, of which the way that Circles End finished, we faded out on a song called Sojourn. So where that faded out on that last album, Circles End, this is where the new album fades up from that exact point. So we actually fade up with the acoustic, which was the end of Circles End, to start this new album. So it's a way of connecting not just one album, but multiple albums all together, like a celebration of everything we've done in the past, incorporating those elements, and then adding some new ideas and things into the Alarum sound as well.
Okay, nice to know. Interesting details to know as a fan. So, in other things, for me to relate all albums from Alarum is the color, because usually since your flow motion you use the green color. in your cover art in your first album you have a green color with the face there. Your second album, as we saw as a few seconds ago, Eventuality has a green color. Now natural causes has the same with as a green color, but like little like a light green color of
Yeah,
this
the
topic.
yellow.
And just the circles end has another kind of approach. It's more like more physics, more nature, more world. So like in some ways it's like more anathema cover if I try to relate one something.
Yeah.
So this new recontinue brings back the color of Alarum. So in this case, what is special meaning that the green color has to you?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's it's very much, a color of, of earth and things growing, as a band musically. We like to think that we can still continue to grow as well as musicians, as a band, as songwriters. Um, so I think that's where the green generally comes from, and the idea to go back to the black, the greens, and that from eventuality. That was definitely something that we wanted to incorporate into the cover art. In the past, a lot of our covers have been a bit different as far as the way that they look. This time, we wanted the cover art to be a little bit more metal looking, if you'd say that, like a bit darker, a bit more metal, to reflect that we think, there's parts on this album that are probably heavier than stuff that we've released before, some of the parts.
Okay. And well, talking about now the labels, will this new album released by perhaps a well-known label or independent label for the future? Because as a fan, it's very difficult to find a CD here without big labels. So is this new album will release perhaps by a European label or by an American label?
Look, we'll see what happens over the coming months, but at the moment, like, yeah, um, people are ordering directly from us, and we're shipping them worldwide at the moment, sending all around the world. So the fact that people are, can order and get them directly from us at the moment, we will continue. We may look to get copies elsewhere for things to be a bit easier for people, but at the moment, yeah, we are shipping worldwide from ourselves.
Okay, nice, nice. Other detail about now, especially is of the music, is the lyrics. How do you incorporate the lyrics into the music? Because your music, or always your lyrics, try to talk about the philosophy for the physics and also the nature. Because you mentioned me clarified about the meaning of the cover art of the eventuality. So in this case, how do you relate the lyrics into your music when your music is so complicated? Because your music is not like DSI, like Cannibal Corpse, when you have more patterns to understand the music. Because if I try to relate also, this new album has jazz, has blues, has bossa nova, has a lot of things, has a lot of layers, textures. So how do you incorporate the lyrics when your music is very complicated to assimilate for a normal headbanger?
I suppose that has been a challenge in the past. In in getting, my heavier voice is quite aggressive, more, from a thrash type background, I suppose, crossover thrash. But the challenge has always been to make the vocals sit in with the music with lots going on. If the bass, the two guitars, and the drums are all playing completely different parts, but making up that as one. It has been difficult to get them to sit in at times. The approach for this album was done a little bit differently, in that with the songs as we were demoing them and writing them, it was to try and keep some of the instruments to be less complicated and technical with some of the vocal parts. So what I did was, I have a vocal booth in which I got in and I did a lot of improvising, just letting out, pure aggression, pure sounds, to try and get the patterns that I really liked. And then I went back, and then the things that I liked, I kept. The things that I didn't, I improvised again until I got to the point where I was really happy with how the vocals were sitting, and then developed the lyrics and the words based off the vocal sounds that I had improvised, which was not anything that had been done in the past with previous albums. Previous albums, was more having ideas and then jamming in the room with the band in practice. This time it was more working it out and recording them until I was happy with how they were sounding, and doing multiple voices in parts as well.
Okay, okay. So other detail about the topic of your music, as you can see, there's a lot of labels now around the world. They're trying to put an alarm. For me, you are more progressive, technical, fusion. I don't know. As I said, this new album bring back to us like the bossa nova, like jazz. That's very difficult to put a label on your band. That's completely normal. But the
Yeah.
fans and the music or the writers try to set it up a label for the band. So in this case, as you are the creator of the entire music, so how do you define your sound yourself?
Yeah, so with our music, we like to think about it as having a core a core foundation, which is the progressive thrash death metal, and no rules, no limitations as to where we want to experiment based off that core sound, whether it's the jazz or some funk or Latin, uh, death metal, black metal, all sorts of metal. The idea is to expand uh, the sound and the experience for ourselves and the listeners, for us to enjoy the creation as well as the challenge, to try and get things to work together in our songwriting and in the journey of not only the song but then the album flow as well. So I think the older we get and the more we seem to continue, there's no shortage of ideas. We're not set into any type of pattern of what we have to do. So we'll always be looking to expand on sounds that we've touched on in the past and improve and make it interesting as well.
Mhm. Okay. Um, and one thing that for me is common when I start to start to hear a lot of music since the end of the 80s. So I remember very well the progressive or technical thrash metal is not a style that commonly spread in many bands. In the 80s, you have Watchtower, we have Megadeth, we have I don't know more bands. They're Havoc, no, they're Coroner, we have
Yep. Death
Toxic,
Row.
and
Death
Voivod,
Row.
Death Row, both Voivod,
Yeah. Yeah.
Voivod,
Yeah.
and you, because you started the band at the beginnings of 90s. So, and since the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now, as you can see, there is not a lot many bands that play progressive thrash metal. And I don't know why, because now we are in the era that we can hear thousands of albums, but
Yeah.
either way, we can find much technical thrash metal, progressive metal. I don't know so why. So in the question goes, what do you think? What do you think there is? Why there's no are many bands that play or introducing progressive or thrash elements or technical elements into the thrash metal as you did, as the old bands did in from the 80s or 90s?
Yeah, like that's a good question. I mean, there's a handful of bands that that have come and gone over the years. Like, for bands to continue doing it, it's not easy. The most popular style, there's what is it? There's a lot of bands in the world that are doing technical music, and it's overly technical as well, which is fantastic. But going back to the more old school, or you've got bands that are coming back like Forbidden, and Voivod, all those bands there that they're still active, Evil Dead, all those sort of more technical sort of thrash bands that are either still around or they're coming back around again. Like, seeing that, hopefully that will inspire some more younger and up and coming bands to explore that more again, if it hasn't been, for some time, a lot of those bands doing that style of music. um, for us, I suppose we've always done this, so we don't know any different to continue doing what we're doing. we've never been the most popular band, but we still enjoy playing what we play. And we see that, there's people around the world that still enjoy what we do as well. So we'll continue doing this style of music. And yeah, it'd be great to see more bands out there doing it as well.
Mm. Okay, okay. Although that they're talking about now the composition and relating with the feeling that you, well, the feel that you felt at the time when you create the music, that's completely normal when you create a riff, and your kind of music always brings to you the numbers. So the mathematical part in at the time when you create the music. So I mean, when you create the music, when you create the music, always you feel the vibe and you create the riff, but at the same time you think in numbers. So when say this scheme goes to 3 or 4 rhymes to create a song, that's completely normal because you try to mix your feeling when the mathematical concept or the musical theory of that's completely normal. So for you, in how do you relate the mathematical topic in at the moment you create the music with the feeling that you when the inspiration came up when the same with some riffs.
Yeah, well, when writing music, like all of us write and contribute to Alarum in the past as well as current like members. So we're all writing it and contributing. When it comes to a lot of the writing, it is based on the feelings. Having played music that has a lot of time signature changes and that whole mathematical side of things where a beat might be missing or something might be added on, it's not something uh, consciously set out to make happen. It definitely comes more naturally that when we're writing, it's about the feel of wanting to experiment and we want the riff to be a beat shorter the second time round to get that particular feel or that particular vibe when we're writing the music. Um, it does come, I suppose, it has come to us quite naturally over the years in the experimentation. Um, the mathematical side of it, sometimes when showing other members, then we do need to then analyze it and go, what are we actually doing? We don't know what we're doing ourselves other than what it sounds like and how to play it. So then we have to break it down and go, okay, there's a bar of 4, there's a bar of 5, there's 2 bars of 7, there's 1 bar of 9. So in our music and in recording that ourselves, we have had to go and then analyze it mathematically and work out what are we doing to help others learn it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, returning to this new album, Recontinue. So, what kind of plans do you have for this new album? I saw that you will play with one of my favorite bands from also from Australia. That's Abramelin, great band. I did an interview with Simon. This is a great guy.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
what apart of that, what kind of plans do you have for the band for this new album? Perhaps you will embark more tours in Europe, Latin America. Who knows? US? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, so our plan now is so next week we get out and release the album, of which we do shows with Abremelin and Pestilence, which we are very excited about. Fans of both of those bands, big fans. So for us to be doing shows with them on the week of releasing our new album is a dream come true really for us. Um, After we finish those shows, then we have a couple of other launch shows in Australia in Adelaide and Melbourne at the start of December. Then over the summer, so it'll be the summer here then, December, January, February, we will be working on doing some more Australian shows earlier next year in 2025 while we continue working and writing for our next album, our sixth album. We're not going to hold off and wait, 2 years before we start writing. We already have ideas and songs underway for the sixth album. So, some of the holiday time over the summer will be spent demoing and getting ideas down for the new material, as well as plans for touring to Europe, to America, Canada, South America, just wherever we can get ourselves a good tour to go and do. Will be doing that. It's obviously it's quite expensive to get anywhere out of Australia to get over and tour internationally. But it's definitely something we're working on, and I think it's been over 10 years since we were last in Europe, and probably 18 years since we were last in America. So we'd like to get to Japan, parts of Asia, lots of places that we haven't been to. Really get out there and tour as much as we can over the coming years.
Okay, nice, nice. And now talking about, I'll return into a little more about the history of the band. So
Mm.
you and Scott are the last members, well, the last members since 1995. Even the band was created in 1994 with other members. So, and with this, did you think that you are the gatekeepers of the sound of Alarum since the beginning to now?
Look, we've definitely been a big part of it. Scott has been on every album except for he wasn't on Natural Causes. But every member that has ever come or gone in Alarum brings an element in. Um, the Alarum sound is that is the combination of ideas and different people's playing. So yeah, there might be some differences between each album, but the core sound of it, having that progressive thrash element in there, is a big part of myself and Scott always being in the band, as well as we've got Jared, our new drummer, a great drummer, and John Sanders, who's been on the last two albums. So it's something that everyone's a part of the sound, and as we continue, the sound will continue having that core element as well.
Mm. Okay, as you can see also, I don't know, talking about other kind of topics, as you are one of the main bands in Australia that plays progressive, fusion, ex technical. At that time, there's not a lot of bands that played so technical, so progressive because it's very difficult. I don't know, or perhaps the instrument. We don't know exactly. A lot of reasons happen at that moment. But now, as you can see, there's a lot of calisthenic people into with the instruments, with the guitar, with drums, etc. And more of these musicians forget the feeling of to play an instrument, and they're just dedicated with technique and this kind of stuff. So now, what's your opinion about this overwhelming musician that care more like the technicality of the progressive and not the feeling of the music?
Yeah, it is quite amazing to see, the level of, complexity that a lot of, even young people like 8, 9, 10-year-olds that can play unbelievably, it's, it's quite impressive to see, like, the speed to the level that what people can get to, as opposed to, practicing for 10 years to be able to play, the early Metallica stuff, or, these days, like it might take someone 6 months and they can play Guthrie Govan or something. Like it's quite amazing that the level and the speed that what people are learning, getting that ability. The technical side of it, as impressive as it is, I suppose it's how you use it, like everything has its place. So if it's just all about the technique and over the top and it's missing the feel of the song and building up tension or taking the listener on a ride on a journey, like it's not all about the technicality. It's also about how it all comes together and with the rest of the band and the rest of the musos and really trying to make it all one working piece.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, well, we are very close to this interview, Mark, and for this topic, as you can see, also other detail that is very for a lot of people that is a little annoying or try to catch up for a lot of releases by the end of the week is we have more than 50, 70, I don't know, 100 releases per weekend. So in the 90s, I remember very well you have 30 releases per 6 months. That's different. Now you have 100 releases per weekend, so it's impossible to catch up. Even we're a media, and it's impossible for us to catch up. That's our releases. So now some people of the old era, the new era, think that this is too saturated to saturate the music industry because we have a lot of releases per weekend. And other people say that is good, have bring new era, have the new having the vibes, etc., for the new listeners. So in this case, what's your point of view? Is it good or is it bad that we have a lot of releases per weekend?
Well, it's great if all the releases, if you have time to check them all out. Like you said, it's difficult to keep up. I mean, the the unfortunate part is there's probably so many great bands and great albums and great music that gets lost because of the amount of music that is out there. Um, for I suppose for the time when a band releases the album, you want as many people to hear it as possible. And I suppose that's the challenge as being a band or being a musician now is how how can you get your music heard like without having to have you know a large amount of money to go on sort of put it out there as far as wide as you can. So I suppose it would be difficult for a lot of new bands to separate themselves. For a band like ourselves that have been around for a long time, it's difficult for us to sort of cut through the amount as well. So I suppose we're relying and hoping that anyone that's ever heard of us or liked anything that we've done in the past, that somehow that they can get wind or that they can hear that we're still around and we're still writing and releasing new music, and that hopefully we can get the support and the listens that people can check it out for themselves.
Hmm. Okay, one of the last questions for this interview. Another detail like that I created the note into a lot of many releases per weekend is that all these productions sounds perfect, and the human touch is not longer felt in many of them, and they seem like a plastic bands in some ways or too perfect. There's when I remember when I hear bands from the 80s or 90s, and that's normal. Some bands it's not good for here. You can put 4, 3, 2 like as a reviewer now, or perhaps another albums in the 80s and 90s you can put 10, 9, 8 for the sound, for a lot of work into the album. But now you can see all albums sounds like flat, completely flat. There is there's 7, 7, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8. There is no 6, there is no 4, there is no 3. There is no mixture in the music now. So what's your point of view about now the future of the music industry with this kind of perfection in all albums? We don't have more any music touch or human touch in the albums.
Yeah, that's one thing that we definitely spoke about and discussed like prior to recording this latest album, is that like there's so much music out there that's it's there's no human errors. It's very polished and very clean and almost sterile, because everything's sounding so similar. So what we really did our best to on this album was to keep it as natural as possible, do our best to play the parts and record them. So we did record all of the drums in a studio, and then all of the guitars, the bass, the vocals were all done here at home. So we could control our playing to play as well as we could, but not go in there and over the top and edit and change the sounds. It was essentially trying to get it right at the start, and then it was about mixing it. So we did reamp the guitars with tube amps. All the sounds are basically the sounds that we use ourselves when we play live. The drums are natural. So we did our best to try and keep it as human as possible, of which, there's undoubtedly things that aren't perfect on it, but hopefully, when people listen to it, they can hear that, that we did our best to not over manipulate the sound of it.
Okay. Well, Mark, we come to the sad moments of this interview. I hope you enjoyed this interview like me. This new album's a great one. Congratulations on it. So perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Methalarium followers.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time, and thank you for for checking out the new album and for your support. We look forward to getting over there and playing shows when we can. It'd be great to finally get over that. And we really want to thank everyone for the support, you know, for a band up until now. And hopefully, like, yeah, if people can give the new album a listen, and if you like it, support us by telling friends or promoters, or purchasing the album or a download. Anything and everything helps us to to continue and move on to do our next album as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you.